Okay, we're recording. Hello, Dean. Welcome to the Frome Music Industry Network.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're Dean G.Hill from What Comes Next, and you are an international artist manager.
I am, yes, for my troubles.
Okay, so what does that mean?
What does it mean? Well, I have lived and worked in many different places, and since walking away from the world of real jobs, which terrifies both my investors and my wife, I have been messing with music, managing artists, building music companies, and generally helping talented people to make progress. And really, when it comes to reference points, although that involves many, many different hats, the only real reference point that the outside world understands is international artist manager, because that covers all of those particular bases.
Okay, so you've got quite an interesting background. Tell us a bit about your experience.
That just reminded me of one of my phrases. I never ask for easy, only interesting, and I got exactly what I asked for. So yeah, where to start really? I only really started doing music professionally when I was 30. Prior to all of that, I did the traditional go and get a proper job, have a career, build a family, you know, do the things you're supposed to do. And in many ways that might have saved my life, actually, given what happened to some of my friends and acquaintances along the way, particularly when we used to hang around near Rockfield Studios and all the shenanigans that went on there. But long story short, I actually started music professionally at the age of 30, and it was a business guru called Sir John Harvey Jones, who strangely I went to with this crazy idea that I had, expecting him to talk me out of it, and he actually talked me into it. And basically what that was, it was effectively the MySpace for music in Britain before MySpace existed. So we registered this thing called tourdates.co.uk, and the instant we registered it, there were people arriving there before there was actually a site. I mean, I don't know how technically that's possible, but the IT guy at the time was telling me this site you've just registered is getting thousands of people a month trying to look for it, and it's not even there. So we knew we were onto something. So basically what we built was a level playing field for artists, from the people just recording in bedrooms, which was only just starting to become a thing back then, all the way up to the megastars. So it was kind of, you had mini profiles, just like MySpace eventually did. Each artist had a profile, and for the internationally famous artists, we put the information on ourselves. For the artists that were kind of cool and indie and upcoming, their PR people would put the information on our website. And then for the unknowns, they would upload the stuff themselves in a MySpace or subsequently Facebook stylee. And this went really, really well for a number of years. We launched a magazine in London, which at one point had a bigger circulation than the NME. Previously, we'd launched a record label and a publisher. Well, it was kind of along the journey, but before it evolved into that MySpace for music in Britain, we'd launched a record label and a publisher to help some of the acts that we'd found along our way. And we ran a music awards. We had an international legal tussle with a juggernaut of a media company over a trademark, and won, which was a bit of an interesting experience, actually. At one moment, I was staring down the barrel of an international court case and total bankruptcy, and the next minute there were tens of thousands of pounds in the bank account, and our business was still there. So a really long and winding journey. At every point, we've tried to think about things from the artist's perspective. What do artists need? What do they want? How can they make progress? How are things changing? How can we get around these obstacles? How can we make it more of a level playing field so that people can get heard and that people can make progress on the basis of talent rather than happening to have a mate in PR or whatever it might be?
So was that all after studying the music business degree?
No, that kind of happened part way along that, because having been in the in the travel industry previously, which was the only thing I was qualified to do, is kind of having bummed around the world a bit. And then I went on to have a manager consultancy. I had a lot of experience in business, but not necessarily in music. So everything we did in music, we effectively just made it up as we were going along. I mean, it turned out that we were pioneers and we were leading the way, but we didn't kind of realize that. We were literally making it up as we went along and trying to be clever and trying to outwit the powers that be, effectively, I suppose, or use the system to great advantage. And so when we had investors on board, and they put quite a lot of money into our company because it was growing so fast and there were so many artists on there, and we were trying to do the right thing by the artists whilst doing the right thing by our investors, I thought, well, I better go and just find out that my thinking is right here. So I went to do a master's in music business management at the University of Westminster. So we packed up home. I actually moved in with my parents for a while because I thought, I'm going to commit to this. So I was running this new company that was really growing very fast and doing a master's degree at the same time, trying to infill my knowledge and basically certificate what I was already doing. But it turned out that we were further ahead. I don't say this with any arrogance, but because we were in there doing it, we were further ahead than even our professors, people that used to have Elton John as their T-boy, for example, and who were teaching us copyright, and we were teaching them things like collaborative filtering, like on Amazon. If you like this artist, you'll like this artist too, and other people who bought this also bought that. We were doing collaborative filtering, things like long tail economics, so that if the more products you add, it doesn't really cost you any more online, so you may as well sell lots and lots. Well, you may as well have a few sales of lots of things as much as having lots of sales of a few things, if you know what I mean. So all of those things were happening in the industry, and we were there doing it and right on the cutting edge of it, and was at university standing up actually giving a mini seminar on some of these things, and they were looking at me with blank looks going, what's he talking about? And then sort of a few months later, it's mainstream, and everyone's talking about it. Like, oh, we need to be doing this, and so it was interesting times. Things were changing very quickly, and we were kind of in and amongst it, and loving every minute of it, if I'm honest.
Okay, so how did it end, and what's made you come back to it?
Right, it never ended actually, but the world nearly ended. And I know that sounds very dramatic, but actually it's quite relevant given the situation we find ourselves in now. There's you coughing into your elbow.
Yes.
We're all afraid of this big bad virus. And I'm slightly more concerned about this big bad virus because the meeting that probably ended what we were doing with our website was when our international media analyst, who was investing in our business, and he put in about $250,000 at that point, and we were en route to spend about $500,000 and potentially en route to sell the business for about £10 million within a couple of years. He came into a meeting that we had, and it was the same accountant as the James Bond producers, Cubby Broccoli and that lot. And so the pictures of James Bond all over the wall, it looked all very dramatic. He comes bursting in and he's white as a sheet. What's wrong? And he sits down and he utters the phrase, Gordon Brown just saved the world. Because he had an inside track and he was an advisor to governments and things, strangely and ironically, one of them being the Italian government, he knew what was going on at a global level. He said, Dino, you've no idea how close the world just came to total and utter economic collapse. I mean, just everything gone, rioting in the streets, breakdown of society, a lot. And he was kind of devastated and elated all at the same time, to the point where he didn't actually give a monkeys that the 10 million that we were going to make on the company was gone, and with it his £250,000. He was just pleased that we still had a world. And so we, instead of sitting around like green-eyed monsters adding extra zeros to our valuation, and are we going to sell in 2 years for 10 million, or wait 5 years for ITV to buy us for £100 million, we all just sat around realizing that the dream was over and that we'd have to dream it all over again, which we kind of respectively did, actually. Yeah.
does that
So,
mean?
well, I hesitate to launch the rest to tell because it's a long and winding one. But basically, I they still had a mind to build it and sell it, and I kind of realised that the game was over. That you know the economic crash of 2008 had finished everything. I had some really good contacts from having been invited to consult for the BBC on the Introducing platform the year before, and I said, do you know what? I'm going to take the things out of this organisation that I know are of value now. You can work on rebuilding that future if you want to, and I'll help you as much as I can. But what I'll be doing is I'll be over here running the record label, the publisher, and off the back of it, I built a music awards called Exposure Music Awards, and we ran that for a few years. So that went from sort of just a small local testing the water show to a regional thing that was in South Central Britain, and then we moved to London and made it national, and then eventually we had a series that ran in Belgium with a sort of showcase tour all around Belgium, and then the finals in Brussels. And so in many ways, even though the main thing, the music website, could have been incredible, and we either could have sold it for a lot and used the money to do other things in music, or we could have helped a lot more artists. What came out of it in many ways was more creative and even more fun. And it helped artists more directly rather than indirectly, because we were hands-on making things happen, like helping artists get signed to major record labels or indie labels or whatever, rather than just providing an infrastructure that they could do it themselves.
Yes, a saturated social media tool.
And yeah, because of that, building that site, we gained a lot of contacts, and having run colleagues who ran the magazine, but having been part of the organisation.
What was the magazine?
It was Tour Dates magazine, which then became Tour Dates London. They did tinker with the format a little bit, and we had a very high-end editor that whose wife was, I think, the editor of Vanity Fair, and I can't remember where he'd come from, but he turned it into the Tour Times at one point. So I thought, oh, it's not very rock and roll. But he did a great job. I mean, I think it ran for a few hundred issues, and I say at one point, because it was free, it was going into all the venues, it had a circulation bigger than the NME. So yeah, interesting times.
Okay, what were the awards called again?
Exposure Music Awards.
Exposure Music Awards, right, okay. So how long have you been out of it?
I never really have been, if I'm honest, because every project I've ever run has either it's done the thing it was supposed to do, and then I'm left with various different contacts and assets and credibility from that, and I've gone on to reformat it into something else. So even when things got really, really tough, the effects of 2008 kind of worked their way through in 2010, and having been sat in a boardroom, the prospect of becoming a multimillionaire, I was there, staring the prospect of potentially losing the house in the face. So I had to go out and do other stuff. So I became a consultant, a business consultant, effectively, although I always kept some artists on and advised them in parallel. And we kind of continued to run the record label, so we were still releasing product and making money for our artists. And actually, fact, making more money for our artists when it became a virtual record label than when it was an actual record label with offices in London and doing it, full bore. Because a lot of what we did was kind of off the infrastructure of the website. The website was well funded, and it was the fastest growing music website in Britain, and it was attracting more interest and potentially more funding. And so we were able to do a lot of things with the label, especially, and the publishing side. That was seed capital came from what we're doing with the with the website, because it all kind of fed back into itself, and it was, you know, supported each other. So that when I was running the label and then the awards in parallel, the awards to find the talent and the label to develop the talent, it all worked very, very naturally. And so I found that even though things have been tough at times and things have almost come to a grinding halt, it's never actually stopped. So I'm still in touch with many of the artists that we support, and I'm still in touch with all of the main investors in the businesses, and to hear the phrase, "We wish we'd given you more money and sooner," for something that didn't happen because of the global meltdown in 2008, that's a great sense of gratification to know that we were doing it and we were doing it right, because the people who lost effectively their investment were actually just glad to have worked with us on the project, knowing how amazing it could have been, or was actually at the time.
What was the record label called?
Raven Black Music.
Raven Black Music. Right, okay.
So on the back of the What Comes Next website, which houses my business consultancy and my artist management and some of the stuff that I do with charities, I've actually got an archive of Exposure Music Awards and Raven Black Music on there, so people can see the artists that, and indeed on the label side of things, although it's privately owned now, we still collect revenues for artists and distribute it out if in the instances where it's significant. There's one particular dance act that Sugar Jesus, where the guy who was the creative force behind it went off and became a producer on the X Factor, and he now lives in Canada and makes a handsome living organizing big global music projects from there, but he still makes a tidy bit of money in musician terms from his music that he released with us. So some of it's all there, still got a little bit of infrastructure, and in fact I'm in talks at the moment. In fact, I was last year about building a new record label that's fit for purpose in the 21st century. Obviously, all of that's a little bit on hold given our new global crisis, but it's always bubbling away in the background. And I think it's because all of the people that I've been involved with over the years, although I'm not directly working with all of them, they're all still there in our network. We've all been there, done it, bought the t-shirt, know what we're doing. And really, if we get a bit of a wave and get the right model, we could do it all over again. I don't say that in a starry-eyed, dreamy, we're going to climb the mountain and hit the peak this time kind of a way. I just have it in mind as always a possibility. And when I'm out consulting for other music companies, like I did quite a lot last year, I was all over the place, Leeds and Manchester and down in Southampton, and meeting artists and recording studios and helping with the A&R process for other bigger music companies. I've always got in the back of my mind, how can this be done better? How can it be taken forward? How can we build a music industry that artists can actually earn a living from before they're rampantly famous, or even if they never become famous, they can still earn a living? Because right now it's still very all or nothing. And I think that's one of the things that drives me, that tantalizing prospect that having been very, very close to making something global work extremely well for lots of artists, that I know that it's possible, even when the industry appears to be broken. And it always is kind of broken.
Is that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the music industry was primarily started by the mafia. I mean, it really was a guns and gangsters type business, like the alcohol business used to be. And although it's kind of glistening and pristine now-ish, I mean, things like the royalty collecting scenario, I used to sit there at the PRS and the PPL and go, right, here's a matrix of how it should work. So we should be able to collect these monies from that country on behalf of artists, those monies from that country, and from here we should be able to collect this, this, and this, right? And they go, ooh, not sure. We go, well, you run this, who's going to know if you don't? And generally speaking, almost every level within those royalty collecting agencies, they didn't actually know how their own organization really ran and what was possible. I mean, things are a lot better now, and the PRS and the PPL are working together, and they really are moving in the right direction. But we did an analysis once. I went to an industry conference called MEDEM in the south of France, and I can't remember the name of the company, but TuneSat, I think they were called. And basically they could monitor any digital broadcast made anywhere in the world and find out, they take in your music catalog, get a digital fingerprint of it, monitor all of the output of the entire world's digital broadcasters, and tell you where your tunes got played. And then we got a monthly report, and we were getting played everywhere in the world all the time. And our royalty checks reflected about less than a tenth of that. And you should say to them, I said, look, the technology is there. These guys have this technology. You could, if you wanted to, take in all of the music that you have on your books from the PPL and PRS, map them against all of the output in the world, and go chasing these guys down for the money. If you wanted to do it, the technology's there. And to date, I don't know how much of that they've actually deployed. But they're up against vested interests, so I can't really criticize them too much. They do a good job with what they currently have, and progress is slow. But yeah, so in answer to your question, it's a long-winded answer, but the music industry is broken. It's always been broken. The reality is it's never really going to get fixed. It's always going to work for the vested interests. You know, you're going to have your big names collecting more royalties off other people's work, and through things like the sampling system in radio airplay royalties, which I won't go into because it's a bit technical and boring. But because of things like that, the big names will always get a bigger slice of the pie than they're actually due than the smaller guy. But there are things that you can do to circumnavigate that and give yourselves, you know, a better chance of success, which is the good news.
Yeah, I mean, as a musician, an independent artist, it's also overwhelmingly complex that I kind of lose the will to live, really. And is that when your knowledge comes to the fore? I mean, I've just recently seen somebody, you know, setting up a kind of seminar about teaching artists to self-manage. What is the value of investing in an artist manager as opposed to trying to learn how to self-manage?
It's going to be different for different artists, but what I would say is although I've worked with a lot of incredibly talented people, some of whom have gone on to do amazing things, I don't think I've ever
the psychological throat clearing.
Yeah. Eject the corona. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually met an artist who has got a handle on everything. So I tend to work in overview mode, that I will know most of the details in almost all of the areas and have a pretty good idea of how it all fits together and who to go to for what. But to get down into the detail of every area, like royalty collection, PR, touring, how you get on a tour with a known artist, you know, the fact that you have to give back most of your royalties that you get from the tour to the known artist in the form of a buy-on, all of those little pitfalls and trapdoors. It's almost impossible for an artist who's focusing on their creative life and doing the thing that they're good at to be able to focus on any or all of that at any given time. And what they actually need is somebody to, not to hold their hand. It isn't patronizing in that way. It's doing a job or work together. So it's you crack on and be an amazing artist. I'll give you some suggestions as to what kind of content you need to be producing. I'll also give you an outside view of which of your songs stands a chance of breaking through, because in the past I've had the honor, as it were, to help choose songs which have ended up in the charts. which is, you know, a rarity these days for independent artists. Sort of give them some guidance on that. And also that feeling that everything's being monitored, at least at the top level, and I'll help you make sure nothing falls over. I'll help point you towards where your energies are best directed. And I'll also help reassure you, you don't have to do everything all the time. So you don't have to be spinning plates or juggling multiple things. I mean, there is a bit of that, especially if you've got some interest in you as an artist. I often tell artists that if you have a degree of success, I've seen it many times, that things will get worse before it gets better, because you're juggling a day job with trying to fulfill media commitments and all that kind of stuff. But it's the reassurance to know that these are the important things right now. If you read a book from Mr. Big, who's already successful, well, he'll tell you those things are important. But the truth is, so long as you're aware of them, they don't matter now. This is what matters now. Worry about that later. But so long as you've not signed a contract that says exclusive, for example, you know, here are your trapdoors, don't fall through any of those. So long as you don't fall through those, everything's fine so long as you do this now. And then we'll focus on the next sort of important stuff further down the line, rather than it all being on your mind all the time. So it really is about boxing clever, coming up with a bit of a roadmap, a bit of a strategy, but at every twist and turn, be almost prepared to throw it all out and start again, because things change very rapidly in this world, as we've just witnessed. And particularly when you're an artist trying to follow the heat. And a number of artists that have missed huge opportunities because they weren't prepared or they were focusing on the wrong thing. It's scary, and I really, really feel for them when that happens. And in retrospect, I've seen more of those than I realized I was seeing at the time. And it gives me no pleasure that there are some instances where I've advised something and they haven't done it, and because of that, they've lost a huge opportunity. It gives me, being right doesn't give any pleasure when, you know, you just want them to be doing the right thing. But if you've got somebody who's got an overview picture, whoever it is, so long as they're genuine and they've got that duty of care for you as an artist, it is invaluable to making progress, because you're doing most of the right things most of the time.
Yeah.
And that gives you a fighting chance of breaking through.
Okay. So your current project is virtual artist management. Can you tell us a bit about that? Yeah,
sure. Well, that kind of stemmed out of me trying to figure out which part of the old me belonged in the new world. And in some respects, I was quite happy tootling along as a business consultant, because I picked up some really interesting creative projects, working in the brewery industry for a while, launching new beer brands, and, you know, doing some really good stuff. But at the same time, realizing that having built the Tour Dates project and helped the BBC put the introducing platform together and all the other stuff that we did back in the day, and some things more recently as well, there's a whole world of knowledge there that I wasn't really using to its full capacity, either for the people that it was useful to, or to myself in terms of, you know, earning potential. And so it was really a wrestle of how can I format something so that I can deliver what I know to people and genuinely help them make progress in the music industry, and preferably people who are positive and got a great message and can actually genuinely help the world in a lot of ways. But at the same time, earn something from it, but in a way that it's not costing each of them too much. So I came up with this concept of virtual management a few years ago, and I trialed it, I think maybe 3 years ago or more, and it worked quite well. I was able to stop doing my business consultancy, and I had about 7 clients on the go. One of whom got an offer, it was slightly after that, one of them got an offer from Warner Chappell, Sweden, and declined that, but wanted to make progress in different ways. And I got them to a point where they got signed by Rock of Angel Records. And that worked really, really well for a while. And then I got tempted to go and get a relatively normal job and earn some relatively normal money. And so I abandoned it. But then later, when I was consulting for a music company, they were transitioning between two business models. So I said, well, I've got this thing called virtual management. It might help you get through this phase and bring you some revenue, and you can help some of the artists you've got out there on your database. And so they did. We put together a new version of this virtual management. It worked great. It helped them transition business models. It helped them reach a lot of artists and help them make progress. And in fact, when I went independent again, some of the artists that were working with me through that approached me and said, well, will you help us with this project? Will you help us with that? And so I've helped launch a few really good projects subsequent to that. So again, quite gratifying that people are coming back going, do you know what, this makes a lot of sense, and we'd like your brain in the room when we brainstorm this project and do our roadmap. The long story short is I just love it. I love helping things that didn't exist before arrive in the world, and there's no kind of artistry that does that better than the music artists that craft amazing songs and with incredible messages and really, really reach people in a way that actually humankind doesn't quite understand how or why it reaches us, but it does.
So who would your ideal client be?
Ooh, my ideal client would be somebody who's hugely talented, very melodic. It doesn't matter if it's mellow or really, really heavy. Melody is the key. So very, very talented, very melodic, lyrically and sonically really well crafted songs that deliver the message. It doesn't have to be clever, although that helps, but messages that really, really hit home and make us really wake up to life and what it's really about and the things that really matter. But more than that, a client who has got some ambition, but at the same time are a little bit realistic, i.e. they don't believe in the A&R fairy is going to turn up in a limo at one of their gigs and whisk them off to fame and fortune. They have to be a little bit realistic. And they also have to get that they have to do the work. A manager doesn't come in and swoop in and go, oh, you spend all of your time in the studio and just don't do anything other than that, and then we'll just make you famous. Just shoot another hit out the back of the studio and we'll stick it in the charts. And
is that what a label would do?
Yes and no. I mean, record labels have become very much like banks these days, is that they won't help an artist until an artist doesn't need their help anymore. So, you're going to need at least 20,000 likes on some social media platform. You'll need to be touring and earning money from it. You'll need to have merch that's actually selling. And then a record label might be interested in investing in you and taking you to the next level.
Is there any way we can take it back to the way it worked, just like good old-fashioned vinyl sort of thing?
Nope, dead and gone.
So you're basically saying an independent artist has to be worrying about getting enough likes and doing merch, and it's nothing to do with the music anymore. It's about likes and merch and all of that.
Well, no, because if you're trying to get a label interested in you, you have to be very, very conscious of your online and offline image. If you're trying to become a successful independent artist and earn a living from your craft, you can almost completely ignore that and start thinking in terms of who are my audience and how can I help them? What am I writing about? Who does it reach? How can I find more of those people? And how can I deliver them the kinds of things that they want to be hearing from me? And so it's about finding your tribe. You can become successful within your tribe. And it's utterly amazing how supportive fans will be if you've got that kind of, it's not us looking up at the artist. It's, I often think in these terms. This poster here is a song called Love Don't Come Easy by a band called The Alarm. And they were kind of contemporaneous with U2. And it often impressed me that they would perform with the same level of passion in the early days when it was 20 people in the room as to when they played the first MTV global broadcast at UCLA, broadcast around the world in 1985, the first ever global MTV broadcast. And I think there were 20, 30,000 people in front of them, but millions watching on TV. And they played with exactly the same passion on that stage as they did in a spit and sawdust pub to 20 people. And I realized early on that band and other bands that I've seen subsequently realized that the audience that they were in front of were as important to the show as they were. They weren't up there and the audience down here. We're equals in this. And it's artists that get that and realize that they're part of a community and that their particular gift is delivering the message, and other people who receive the message will give them back love and encouragement and inspiration. It forms a, I don't want to sound too wild and hippie about it.
Why not?
Well, yeah, why not? That's the truth. That's the real truth. Is artists who are successful within their niche have a message to deliver to the world, and it's about wake up, realize what's important, let's have fun together. It really is look after each other. It really is actually that simple. And although not all artists will be successful, and as much as they might not reach the point where they make a living, or they might not reach the point where they become a noted name or a household name in the nth degree, but they might find themselves in a position where either their music pays for itself and they can fund their passion, or they might arrive at a point where they can work part-time and the music becomes their main focus. Or some of them, if they're really, really connected with their tribe, for want of a better word, can earn a really good living from it. And it's about being connected with your audience and realizing your audience is as important as you are, if not more so, because without them, you're nothing.
Yeah, because I do often see artists asking people to support them. And I think with any other trade, it's about how can you serve? Do you know what I mean? Yes. And I think that's what we need to think about, isn't it? It's like, how can I serve as an artist? You know? Yeah.
And it's the same for me, and it's really, really difficult because my focus has to be, how can I genuinely add value to this artist's career? And how can I take little enough from them so that it's not exploiting them, but enough from them and help as many of them that I can pay my mortgage? Quite simply, because I could go off and get another semi-corporate gig with a client and suffer the stresses and strains which come with that, or go out and get the real job. But that isn't where I add value in life. Where I add value is helping artists through their journey. That's what I want to be doing, and that's why I put the virtual artist manager thing together, is to enable you to do that as effectively as possible.
So in a nutshell, you're looking for clients who have got a positive message, they're on a mission to make a difference, and they're willing to work.
Yes, they realize that most of the hard work falls on their shoulders. That somebody like me or a PR person further down the line is there to add their layer of overview and service and assistance. But ultimately, it comes back to them. Are they prepared to take the steps? Are they willing, for example, to see a gig not as one gig but as three? And this. We had 3 unsigned bands, and we sold out a guild hall that was the kind of place that artists would do warm-up shows for Glastonbury. The Gloucester Guildhall, great venue, love it to bits. And we've done quite a lot of stuff there. But one occasion there were 3 unsigned bands, and we filled it to capacity. And the way we did it was the artists concerned really thought about who their audience were, how to reach them, and they went out busking on the street the week before the gig, handing out CDs and flyers and connecting with their audience. And those people that they met in the street were there queuing outside the building and round the corner for this event. And we put 3 months of our lives into that show. And instead of the artist sitting back going, oh, it's the promoter's job to sell the tickets, and then being disappointed when there's 5 people there, they got off their asses and they went busking and they connected with their audience and they made it happen. They couldn't have made any of it happen without the framework that we put around it, like booking the venue and, you know, doing an online thing that made it look important and interesting and doing press releases for them. But the bare bones were, if they hadn't have got out on the streets and busked and connected and handed out flyers, that show wouldn't have even been half full.
So would you say that the alarm is a good icon for us to kind of study?
Yeah,
I mean, if they got a good message and stuff, I've never really thought about what they're saying, what they're saying.
Well, put it this way, that, I mean, I hesitate at this point because in some ways with U2 as well, who they were contemporaneous with, a lot of people think that it's very retro and kind of take the mickey a little bit. And I want to emphasize that we deal with a lot of cutting edge artists that have got a very modern message. But the mechanics of having a grassroots fan base hasn't changed. It's connecting with people. And yes, the Alarm are a fantastic role model in that respect. The lead singer has survived cancer 3 times, and his wife has survived cancer, you know, touch and go as well. And rather than just sort of wallowing in it and soaking up the pity and, you know, adoration from the fans, they built an organization called Love, Hope, Strength Foundation. And they do gigs in unusual places, like the top of the Empire State Building. They climbed Kilimanjaro and did a gig at the top of Kilimanjaro. They went to the base camp of Everest and then did a gig in Kathmandu town square, and then bought a scanner for the hospital, cancer unit of the hospital in Kathmandu. So yes, they've taken it beyond just connecting with your audience and recognizing that your audience is as important as you are. They've gone to the point, well, not only have we got a message to deliver, but now that we've got a fan base that supports us, we have the facility to do actual real things in the world, like raise money for cancer units. And it's those kind of positive, real world-changing things that almost any decent artist has it within them to achieve. And the difference is guidance, hard work, and if I'm honest, quite a lot of luck.
So, okay. I mean, saying, yeah, the audience is everything, really, isn't it? Because without those likes,
so if
you're not getting it. Well, yeah.
If you're a little bit millennial about it, and sit there going, my music's amazing, why isn't everybody following me in droves? The world is so hard, and how am I going to get there? And no, you know, I'm not going to get famous. You'll never make it. But if you're going, do you know what? I've really got a gift for writing songs. For want of a better phrase, who can I bless with this gift? Who needs this message?
God's gift, baby.
Who's going to be uplifted by what it is I've got to say? Go find them, go uplift them, go you know, make their life slightly better because of the way you phrased a certain thing that they've always been feeling but never knew how to express. And just do more of it and just keep going.
Yeah, that's useful. Okay, I think you're writing some kind of guide at the moment as well, aren't you? Tell us about that.
I am, yes. I wrestled with it slightly because I've called it Unfamous, and so it's Unfamous: how to have your creativity recognized and get paid for it. And it was, I think it was quite subconscious that I called it Unfamous, because it's like, oh, shouldn't you be writing a book about how to become famous? And the more I was writing it, the more I realized the message was exactly the opposite, because I've sat with globally famous celebrities on a sofa with them bawling their eyes out because they have the dream life that every artist aspires to. And when they get there, they're under so much pressure. It's a ball of shit. It really is. And so I called it Unfamous because it really isn't about shooting for personal notoriety. It's about fulfilling what it is that you've got in you and trying to make a living at that along the way, and how that's still actually just achievable with the world and the music industry as it currently is. And I'm thinking of maybe adding a sort of a post-crisis section as well, because I've got it finished in draft form, and I have actually referenced, and I did wrestle with myself, should I name drop or should I not name drop? And what I've done is sort of a kind of an in-passing, informal little insight into some of the known people I've come across along the way. But I realized that each of the stories that I told about those actually have a bit of a salient lesson in them for an artist who's trying to make progress and shooting for a dream that they might think is the case when actually it isn't, and that a different path could be potentially more fulfilling and more likely to result in some level of success. So I'm actually finding the writing process very cathartic, and I've enjoyed it very much. But there's as well as that, there's lots of practical steps in there, like how to deal with social media, how to build your audience online, not in a kind of a cheesy everybody love me kind of a way, but in a where's my audience, how can I network with them effectively.
Yeah, I mean, being able to identify your target market is what,
very useful.
how do we do that?
In a nutshell, I mean, I cover all the key areas of what an artist needs to do, and there's a bit of a mini timeline. I've thrown this around with music industry colleagues. In particular, ran it past a guy called Derek Sivers, who is an artist himself, but actually set up a company called CD Baby, and he sold that for a gazillion dollars, but a few tens of millions of dollars anyway. His story is quite interesting. He locked that up in a trust fund and went traveling around the world, living minimally, figuring out how he could help artists and creative people achieve their dreams, as it were. And so I ran this process past him, this 5-year process, and he said, Dino, I've got to be honest. I've seen so many of these things in my time. Most of them are complete horseshit, and I nearly didn't read it, but I read it, and actually, given the state of play in the music industry, this is probably the right kind of route to be taking for independent artists. And so that encouraged me to roll part of that, at least, into this guide. And so it has the endorsement of people who've been there, done it, bought the t-shirt, made a few mistakes along the way, but have become stratospherically successful. And so that gives me a good positive feeling that I'm probably on the right lines with this. To have poured all of that experience into a guide of some sort. Still not quite sure how I'm going to use it. It might be that, you know, I'll be able to generate some income from that, or it might be that I decide just to give that away free, and thereby the right artists will find me, and I'll be able to sort of help them with their journey. So it's not quite sure how to use it at the moment, but it's almost pretty much done, bar a what to do after the crisis section.
Yeah. Do you know how the music industry is getting supported right now?
Well, at the start of the crisis, when it looked as if it was relatively manageable, I was starting to steer my artists towards synchronization revenue, because I realized that at some point, playing live gigs was probably going to have to stop, and that people were going to be at home looking for other forms of entertainment, and they'll be watching gazillions of films, and thereby, wouldn't it be a great idea if our artists got their music into more films? So I started trying to get them sync ready, as it were. So sign up to a sync agency, who basically the people who broker songs into the film industry, and to get all of your songs you've got and have an instrumental ready to go for the final edit and stuff. So I started pointing artists towards that, only to then realize that the crisis had got so bad But these big film companies like Netflix, I was chatting to somebody the other day who said Netflix have closed all production of all of their films because it involves people being in close proximity. So I guess the story in that is that, you know, even when you're being very strategic based on knowledge, you never know what the world's going to do. So
it's only temporarily, hopefully.
That is temporary, and I think sync might be an answer to some of the issues. But one of the things I'm feeling very strongly at the moment, I'm feeling that myself in terms of what I'm going to do as an artist manager, but also for the artists themselves, is that you shouldn't be waiting until the crisis is over to figure out what your life is going to look like from them, because you'll be coming out stone cold and going, well, what's going on? You should be trying to think a little bit ahead of the curve and not write the agenda or force the agenda, but be part of the conversation as to what's going to happen next. And so, for example, the conversations that I was having at the end of last year about setting up a new record label that's fit for purpose, the working capital for that has disappeared. But I've brought elements of that into another collaborative, and one of the ideas that's come out of that is an idea called You Gig Big. And so, without giving away what we have in development, we are actually going to be connecting the best grassroots venues with the best grassroots artists and being a little bit of a catalyst for generating new live activity once things perk up. And we're using the time now to develop that. So we've got an app developer working on that whilst we have time. And we're trying to get as much feedback from artists and industry as we can as to what they will be able to achieve if things get back to normal in a month, or get back to normal in 2 months, or get back to normal in 3 months. So we've got a bit of an idea and a bit of an if then else kind of where we might go with things. And artists need to be thinking in those kinds of terms as well. I mean, everybody's doing sort of webcasting now and doing sort of gigs online. And we were starting a new gospel soul music night. And the very first night was due to be the day after Boris Johnson announced that public gatherings were being discouraged. So we put that online, and that worked, you know, quite nicely for our first event. But then everybody's going to be doing that soon. So artists need to be thinking, okay, well, that's a great thing to do, doing an online gig, but then soon that'll be saturated. And what do you do after that? And so thinking, not just sitting back going, oh, well, let's see what happens. It really got to be proactive about stuff and try stuff and think about stuff and formulate a strategy as to what you're going to do when all of this gets better, but not wait until then. Be ready for them and be ready for a couple of different scenarios.
All the ideas coming from you if we invest in you.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I love doing, is extracting ideas from people that are already in there, but they don't realize they're in there. You know, I've done that for business. So, for instance, there's a sculpture park down the way from here. That's the Cotswold Sculpture Park, which didn't exist a couple of years ago. I sat with the founder, the guy who owned the land, and just chatted it through with him. And then we decided that all of the things he was talking about had the similar theme. It was all about the elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And so we said, well, let's call this the Elemental Exhibition, or the Elemental Sculpture Park, and launched it off the back of that. And then we used that, plus we added the element of spirit as well into our email communications. And it had the biggest open rate of any email campaign it ever worked on. There were sculptors and artists falling all over him to work with him, because we came up with a concept that was already in his head, although he didn't have a name for it, and basically took the steps. Okay, we're going to need AA signs, we're going to need insurance, we're going to need this, and some practical bits and pieces. And so, right, we'll need this. And so I worked with him. Okay, what are your strengths? Which of these can you achieve yourself? Which would you like me to handle? And so we brought that into reality. And that's the same with artists. It's a case of brainstorming, figuring out what you've already got, using it well, being a bit strategic about where you're going next, and then taking the steps towards it. And there's where the hard work comes in.
Okay, great. Anything else that you'd like to say to those people out there that you want to bring value to?
Yes. It's this, is that every stage in my business life and creative journey, I've been fighting two diseases, and they're very, very prevalent in Great Britain. Not so much in America, and actually not so much in Europe, but in Great Britain, we suffer with cynicism and apathy. And I know that there are a lot of charlatans out there, and I know there's a lot of horseshit, and I know that you've got to be careful. But when you're presented with a proposition that's designed to help you, don't just dismiss it out of hand. Look at it, and don't just think, oh, it's a one of these with a bit of one of those, or it's just a one of those, I don't want anything to do with it. Actually look at what it's actually offering you. Actually look at who it is that's offering it you, and then make your decision based on some facts rather than an emotive response. Because you are fighting cynicism and apathy constantly in your artist journey, like apathy that people don't want to get off their sofa and come to your gig, or cynicism that, oh, you know, that genre's dead, nobody's going to want to listen to that. You're constantly fighting cynicism and apathy, so don't become victims to those things yourself. And whether you work with me or somebody else, always look at it, at who is offering you what. Do a little bit of digging, find out who they are, think about what they're actually offering you in real terms, and it's never going to be a magic wand, ever. If somebody says, oh, I'll just take it all off your hands and do it all for you, that just doesn't ever happen. You are still, well, the bad news is that you're still going to be doing most of the work. The good news is that most of that work that you do will be in the right direction. You'll get some benefit from it, and you'll retain your independence as well. You'll remain in the driving seat. So yeah, just think about how you're going to make progress. Realize that you probably do need some help. Go looking for that help. If you're offered something, try and find out what it actually is, rather than making any presumptions about what it might be and making a decision based on that. Does that make sense?
What's the opposite of cynicism and apathy?
Cynicism and apathy.
The opposite.
I actually don't think you need the opposite of cynicism and apathy. I think you need to use those in a different way. So cynicism can be replaced by being wary. So
Skepticism.
Cynicism is, I'll just write everything off and think it's a ball of shite, because most things, and that's true, most things are. I mean, in this day and age where our economy is driven by debt and companies selling us crap that we don't need, the marketing game is all very psychological, and we're just being sold loads of stuff that we don't need or even want in certain instances. So, you know, it's natural to be cynical, but if you can dial down that cynicism to wariness and go, okay, most of this stuff's going to be nonsense, but some of it won't be.
Streetwise?
Streetwise. Yeah, use it in a streetwise way rather than just writing everything off, because you become a very closed person that way. And whether we're talking about this or any other area of life.
Discerning, that's okay, isn't it?
Discernment, yeah. Don't be cynical, be discerning.
Be objective. What was it? Be objective, be selective, be an asset to the collective.
Yeah, man. You got that down.
You know, you got to get alive.
We could do a whole seminar on that, but we should do it around a campfire, I think, in the post-crisis days. And then with regards to apathy, be aware of your own apathy, because we all are lazy gits. I mean, I used to run an event that was on the second Sunday of every month. And every time it came around, thinking, why have I even set this event up? I don't want to go. It's Sunday afternoon, and I just want to have some wine after my lunch and veg out. every time I went to it, there was something in it. There was either an amazing artist or an incredible audience reaction, or somebody came up and said, "Oh, I was here last time. I've come back because it was amazing." You know, there's always something that was special about it. And if I hadn't gotten over my app, well, I had to be there as one of the organisers. But you know, under normal circumstances, oh, do you know what? I just won't be bothered. But I think it's important to recognise when it's okay to give yourself a break and go, do you know what? I've been out a couple of nights this week. I just fancy slobbing out. I'm not going to work on my promo for the next gig because I'll do that on Tuesday. But the important thing is actually do it on Tuesday. So be aware of your own apathy. Know that that's going to happen anyway. Sometimes you just got to get over yourself and do it. Other times you can go, do you know what, I'm really not feeling it today, but I'll reschedule it and just work to your strengths when, you know, at the times when you feel a bit inspired to do it, so long as most of it gets done. So most of the right things, mainly in the right order, and you'll be cooking on gas. So if you can dial your cynicism down and be aware of your apathy, give yourself a bit of a break on it sometimes, but other times just go, do you know what, if I don't do this promo, that gig's going to be empty. That's what I'm going to do.
I think that's really good language for musicians. Yeah, so dial down the apathy and turn up what? The enthusiasm? What are we doing on the EQ here?
Just passion.
All right, so we'll turn up the passion, we'll dial down the apathy.
Yeah.
And the discipline as well, because we'll have to plod on with certain chores as well, won't we?
Yes and no.
Well, I think straightening out our social media presence when we just want to be like making some tunes can be a bit of a boring discipline, can't it?
Okay, we need discipline in there.
And trying to work out what PPL and PRS can offer us, you know,
yeah.
trying to work out what they're actually trying to say. Stuff like that just does your head in.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where some of the shortcuts can come in handy, because you can read the PRS or the PPL website, and if you've got that kind of technical mind, you might get it straight away. But
if you get a label, would they do all that for you?
Depends what size of label it is.
A commercial label would have all the people in position, wouldn't they?
Big commercial label will do all of the PPL and PRS. They'll register all of your stuff on your behalf, register you as the artist. But in the case of the PRS and the PPL, as the PRS, you'd have to register as the writer. The PPL, you'd have to register as a performer.
But they would do all the business stuff for you, would they?
They would do all the businessy stuff and the admin that surrounded that, correct.
So that's the ideal, really, is it?
But that's potentially the ideal. But bear in mind that labels aren't working with you until the point where you don't need them anymore.
Why? Why is it like that?
Because they're like the banks. They want a surefire. Well, they want to reduce their risk as much as possible. I remember going to the bank manager for a business loan, and it was a government loan guarantee scheme, much like the one that's being launched now. And the government had underwritten 75% of the loan. They were charging me a big interest rate in return for taking the risk, and they're only bearing the risk on 25% of the loan. And this bank manager didn't realize the terms of it, and he wanted me to put my house on the line to guarantee the rest. And I said, so you've got 75% underwritten by the government, you've only got 25% of the risk, you're charging interest rate as you know, that's why I'm paying you to take the risk, and then you wanted me to underwrite your risk as well. And they went, yeah. And that's what record labels are like as well. They will only take interest in artists that are either they're doing it already and earning some money that can just be invested in and accelerated, or if they see somebody who's on that curve, that, okay, well, they might not be there yet, but look at how they're trending. And that's all A&R men do these days. They sit behind screens, listening to Spotify playlists, looking at numbers of plays, flicking onto social media, seeing how many likes you've got. And bear in mind that they can sniff a rat a mile off if you just played some clip farm in the Philippines to boost your numbers. They're very, very wary of that. They can see if it's genuine.
So Billie Eilish is genuine then?
Don't know. There was, what was her name? Was it Sandy Tom? She was presented to the world as being an overnight sensation, having done one of the first live streamed gigs from her basement. And the truth behind that is that she'd done something of note previously that hadn't quite worked out, but a record company back in the day when they were a little bit more speculative decided to invest in her anyway, and they helped her organize the live stream gig from a basement that went viral because they were making it happen with their investment, and then sort of made a big show of signing her retrospectively when actually they were already working with her. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. But the long and the short of it is the record industry as it currently is now is that the labels like the banks are risk averse, and they will only invest in you if they're almost certain that it's going to fly.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And they require very strong foundations, a good fan base, people are already buying your stuff.
Okay.
So the point is, whether you're going to take that path with a record label or whether you're going to continue being an independent artist, you need to build those foundations.
Right. Brilliant. Which is how you can help independent artists move from trying to work it all out to the level where we can negotiate with the big boys and girls. Yeah. Is that where you bridge it?
Exactly. And I've been in those situations before where we've engineered that for artists, and they've been signed to big independents and major.
Okay. So you're looking for musicians who are serious about being the best they can be and becoming professional. Is that okay? You know.
Yes.
They don't want to. It's not necessarily all about the fame and fortune. It's just about being professional and creating a sustainable living, doing what they're passionate about. Yeah.
And if any of them want this guide that I'm working on, maybe they could drop me a line and we'd figure something out.
And how do they do that?
Through the email address. If you go discover@whatcomesnext.com, dash is between the words, discover@whatcomesnext.com, or via your good self, I'm sure you'll put them in touch. Then we could start a conversation.
So what's your website generally again, just for the good people?
It's whatcomesnext.com with dashes between the words.
So what-comes-next.com. Okay, that's brilliant. I think that's wrapped it up, isn't it?
I think so, neatly in a little package.
Yeah, I'm going to go and dial down my apathy and turn up my passion and
Good luck.
Get thinking. Yeah, thanks, Dean. Speak to you soon.
Nice to chat to you at a distance, and hopefully we can do this properly at some point with a pint in our hands and hugs all round. Yeah, brilliant. Or wearing a tuxedo and a sparkly dress at some kind of ceremony. Anyway. Anyway, okay, see you soon. Thanks a lot. Stay safe, people.